You are listening to Small Business Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. Amber is a sought-after coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives small business owners the straight talk on productivity, time management, business systems, leading your teams, strategic decision-making, and mindset. No BS, fluff, or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here is your host, Amber De La Garza, the productivity specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to the Small Business Straight Talk podcast. Today is episode 320, 6 tips to manage your time blindness. If you're a small business owner who wants to learn effective business strategies, improve time management, and elevate productivity to maximize profits, reduce stress, and make time for what matters most, you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you've joined me. We're going to be diving into the topic of time blindness so that you can learn how it may be affecting you and your business and take action to minimize the unintentional costs. Before we jump into today's episode, I want to invite you to take my next level business owner quiz. What's more productive than taking a short 3-minute quiz to help you find out what's most holding you back, and then you get a personalized playlist to help you solve those exact pain points. So hit pause and take your leadership and business to the next level. Head on over to amberdelagarza.com/quiz. And now let's get to the straight talk. So, what is time blindness? I'm glad you asked. Time blindness refers to the inability to recognize when time has passed or to estimate how long something will take. Dr. Michael Manos, PhD of Cleveland Health Clinic says, time blindness isn't a diagnosis or a specific symptom. It's more just a general way of talking about the phenomenon of losing track of time. And it can be more extreme in some people. So, have you ever misestimated how long something would take? Have you ever been working and thought you just got started and you lift your head up and you ask yourself, where did the time go? Do you have something on your to-do list that you think should take 30 minutes and you start working on it and clearly it needed 90 minutes or maybe an hour? That is what I'm talking about today with time blindness. And I believe that everybody is affected by some level of time blindness at some points, and it is a spectrum, as Dr. Manos said. But let's talk about who does time blindness affect. Time blindness comes up a lot when people talk about individuals with ADHD, but according to Dr. Manos, everybody has time blindness at times. We all can get caught up in something and get in the zone. And it's a great thing to be able to get into that zone, as he calls it. Time blindness can serve you well and allow you to actually enjoy yourself. As I was coming up with this specific episode and the content, I really delved deep into time blindness. And oftentimes we hear it as a negative, something that is challenging us with our time management and our productivity. But the truth is that we can have time blindness because we're just enjoying the moment. You could be in the midst of a hobby or watching a good movie or maybe at rocking it out at a concert. You don't want to be thinking about time during those activities so that you can actually be present and enjoy them. So it is a benefit that you can tune out, be in the zone, and be blind to time from period to period. We don't necessarily suffer from it. We can benefit from time blindness as well. Time blindness can be visualized on a broad spectrum, from being selectively time blind during certain activities to being severely time blind to the point that it is difficult to control, hard to turn off, and has become detrimental to your work and relationships. If that's the case with you, it's important to take action to better manage your time blindness because it has the potential to cost you a lot. Next, we're going to talk about common symptoms and the costs of unintentional time blindness. Number 1, you have difficulty managing your time. You might find yourself thinking that certain tasks will take a considerably more or less time than it actually does, which can really mess with your time management. Or you might have moments where it feels like time is slipping through your fingers, which makes you stressed out, anxious, and maybe even overwhelmed. 2, you're chronically late for everything. You often end up running late for meetings, appointments, or getting together with friends. You never mean to be late though, but you can't seem to help it. And it often becomes frustrating to you and those who are waiting for you, team members, clients, colleagues. This can really damage relationships and the perception that they have of you. And that's unintentional, of course, but this does have an impact, which brings me to number 3, key relationships. Time blindness can affect, like I said, team members, clients, business partners, colleagues, and your reputation takes a hit because you maybe show up consistently late or you appear to not respect other people's time. And this often gets extended to others thinking that you are not dependable. And in my experience of working with my clients, that's actually not often the case. I find that my clients care. My clients want to give exceptional service. And in other areas of their business, they do give exceptional service. But the perception of showing up to a meeting or a presentation late is often something that others can't get over, seeing you through that lens. Number 4, you struggle with switching between tasks. Switching from one thing to the other can be pain for you, as it is a brain struggle to shift gears from one task to the next. It might be tough to wrap one task up and then jump into the next task without feeling frustrated or losing focus. And so when we think about moving through our task list or time blocking, and you understand that you need to shut one thing down, maybe even before it's come to full completion, because now it's time to travel to go to a meeting, or maybe it's time to jump into another project or to meet with a team member. With time blindness, that switching of tasks can be incredibly uncomfortable and is often something that you avoid. So then you may find yourself stuck in the same tasks or projects longer than the time you have to allocate to that task or project. Number 5, you often procrastinate. You might find yourself putting things off. Not necessarily because you don't want to do them or because you're lazy, but because you're trying to figure out how much time you need to do them can be tricky. Like you literally cannot quantify the amount of time to finish that presentation or to prepare for a speech or to finalize the design plans or prep for a client and the work that you're going to be doing with them. Whatever that task or project is, you're not really able to determine what time needs to be allocated to that particular scope of work. And so sometimes we tend to procrastinate and avoid that. On the other side of this, you may procrastinate because you sincerely believe you have enough time. Like your mind, your brain is saying, I have plenty of time. I don't need to get started on that right now. I don't need to do that thing right now. And that tends to look like procrastination. Number 6, you struggle with impulsivity. You sometimes find yourself acting on impulses and making choices without thinking of their long-term consequences. Maybe you dive into your ideas head first without planning what happens before, during, or after. You jump into the task that is like the squeaky wheel, or respond to the email that is at the top of the email, or the person standing at your desk, and you're jumping from one thing to the next without really quantifying, do I have time to invest in this thing, whether that's a individual task, a conversation, a project? Sometimes that might be because you just simply don't ask that question of yourself. You just impulsively move into one thing after the other without having context as to where do you need to be next? What time is it? Or is it almost the end of the day? Do you have other competing priorities and responsibilities that need your time, energy, and attention? And those questions are not often filtered before just doing it. Number 7, you find it hard to meet deadlines, especially with projects that have multi-phases or multi-steps to it, because it's harder for you to quantify the time, to understand how long it's going to take to get you from A to Z, or in many cases, just from A to B and then B to C. And so what that results in is missing deadlines, missing appointments, forgetting your assignments, maybe doing subpar work just to maybe hit the deadline, but you know that you could have given a higher level of effort, a higher level quality of work because of the time blindness. Number 8, this is one that I see very frequently, and this is overcommitting yourself. Because you cannot actually quantify the time that you have or the time that you have available, because of time blindness, you say yes to way too many things. When someone asks you to do something, be somewhere, complete something, participate in something, volunteer for something, whatever that looks like, your brain says, of course. Of course, I have all the time in the world. As long as I want to do it, it's a yes. And unfortunately, just because we want to do something, it doesn't mean that's the only filter. We often have to understand what is our available bandwidth to be able to say yes. Another thing that shows up with overcommitting yourself here is not delegating. So this could look like just delaying hiring, or you could have hired and you're still holding back work because you think you have the available time to do so. And because of the time blindness, you're not quite clear about your capacity. And if you were really clear about the capacity, it would be more important for you to understand the importance of delegating so that you can focus on what you've already committed to or said yes to. Number 9, find planning difficult. Do you find it difficult to plan out into the future? Because you're not successful at planning, it's tempting to not plan at all and just go with the flow. And I'm telling you that even though you may find it difficult to plan, spoiler alert, I'm going to be sharing with you some tips. And the key is actually to plan. So if you find it difficult to plan your days, your weeks, your months, your quarters, or understanding your annual goals and what that would look like on a weekly and daily basis, stay tuned. I'm going to be giving you some strategies before we close out today. Number 10, one of the costs of time blindness is constantly rolling over tasks from day to day. We roll over tasks from day to day because we've overcommitted to how many tasks we can get done, because we're overly optimistic in what can get done, because we're not looking at tasks with a time allocation to say, task A is 10 minutes, task B is an hour, task C is 30 minutes. We think that it could just all get done. And unfortunately, that creates a anxiousness, overwhelmed, disappointment. It affects our mindset when we're consistently rolling over tasks that we thought we could get done day after day. Which leads me to number 11, which is generally feeling overwhelmed and defeated. If you're rolling tasks over day after day, that can most definitely make you feel defeated, because what I know is that you worked hard that day. I know that you probably showed up and you did get a lot done. But because you overcommitted, because there was more on your to-do list for that day than was actually ever possible, oftentimes we look at what we didn't get done and not what we did get done. So this consistent pattern can affect your self-esteem. It can affect the ability to trust yourself, to feel like you're someone that does what they say they're going to do. And the overwhelmed aspect of this is that at the end of the day, you're affirming that there's never enough time to get it all done. And while there's truth with that as a business owner, you will never get it all done, when we can more properly plan what can actually get done in a day, I find that we can make peace with that because we have chosen the highest value, highest priority activities over us telling ourselves we can get it all done. So maybe it doesn't matter which order it gets done. And sometimes what that leads to is that the tasks or projects that get rolled over are the important ones. They are the ones that if they had gotten done, you would feel like you won the day. Number 12, and this is our last one I'm going to share with you today. And while this is just a short list and there's probably many more costs to time blindness, I want to end it with the idea that you cannibalize your breaks. So you might actually schedule breaks for yourself. And if you've been a listener of this podcast, you'll know that I believe that taking breaks is often the most productive thing that you can do. You need to fuel your body. You need to recharge your body. And when you have time blindness and things take longer than expected, or you've procrastinated on something, then you tend to work right through taking your breaks because the work's not done yet. Another reason you may be cannibalizing your breaks is going back to the inability or difficulty, rather, of switching tasks. So you are working on something, it's not quite done, and it's lunchtime. What do you tend to choose? Do you tend to honor that you need to eat and take a break and step away? Or because you find it challenging switching tasks, you just continue to work? Now, I'm talking about specific breaks during your work day, but also time blindness affects the breaks like, do I feel like I can take time off? Can I have time off when I'm done with work and I go home? Am I getting back into work because of the guilt of not getting enough done during the day? Perhaps you're not scheduling vacations or long weekends to be able to take these sustained breaks because you're consistently feeling overwhelmed and behind. So I have to ask you, do you relate to any of these symptoms? I'm going to recap them really quick with you, and I want you to ask yourself, I believe that we all experience one of these at some point, but I want you to ask yourself, do you relate with a lot of these? Do you relate with a lot of these frequently? Then you're going to want to stay tuned to the rest of this episode where I share with you ways in which you can manage your time blindness. But as a recap, number 1, you have difficulty managing your time. 2, you're chronically late to everything. Number 3, key relationships are being affected by your time blindness. Number 4, you struggle with switching between tasks. Number 5, you often procrastinate. Number 6, you struggle with impulsivity. Number 7, you find it hard to meet deadlines. Number 8, you overcommit yourself. Number 9, you find planning difficult. Number 10, constantly rolling over tasks from day to day. Number 11, feeling overwhelmed and defeated. And lastly, number 12, cannibalizing your breaks. Okay, so let's jump into ways to manage your time blindness. Number 1, and top of the list to manage your time blindness, is to admit that you're prone to time blindness. By acknowledging you're prone to time blindness, you can choose to implement the following strategies that I'm going to share with you to help manage time blindness so that you can effectively manage your time. Number 2, plan your day using the daily wrap. I teach the daily wrap, which is daily review and action plan, to my clients. And this is a foundational strategy that is built upon for all time management and productivity with every client I work with. I have shared those steps in episode 167, Conquer Your Day, using the 5 daily planning pavers. But I want to go through those steps with you today. There's 5 steps, and I'm going to tie them back and explaining why each of these steps helps you improve time blindness. Step number 1 to the daily review and action plan is to review the current day. So I am assuming you're planning this evening for tomorrow. However, that does not always need to be the case. You can plan in the morning for the same day. But as I go through this list, just imagine at the end of your workday, you're spending 15 minutes to do your daily wrap. So to do that, I'm asking you to review the current day. I want you to have a reality check. I want you to get really clear with what actually happened. Meaning, if you scheduled 5 tasks, did 5 tasks get done, or was it 4? If you had meetings scheduled, did they start on time? Did they end on time? If you plan to work on a specific task or project, did you do what you say you were going to do? If you scheduled a task or project and you thought that it would take 30 minutes and it took an hour, I want you to do a reality check and ask yourself, did it take an hour because I was interrupted, I was distracted, I switched tasks? Or did it really take an hour because it takes an hour? And this is huge because what this will do is give you new data, right? It's going to tell you that next time you do that task or similar, it is not 30 minutes as you thought it was when you guesstimated the time. But when you do similar tasks over and over and you're checking in with reality of how long that thing actually took, the next time you plan that task or project, you will be more accurately planning the time that it would take to do that. This is incredibly important because oftentimes we just think something's going to take that long. It takes longer and we're like, but we don't reevaluate that data. We don't override the 30 minutes and say it needs to take an hour. All right. Step number 2 is to review the next day. And this is important because I want you to be able to actually quantify the available time that you have to plan working on tasks, working on projects. And so by looking at the following day, you are going to know, is this a full work day in the office? Am I out on appointments? Do I have 3 calls to make? What's the lay of the land and availability to be able to plan the areas in which you don't already have yourself committed? Without looking at tomorrow, oftentimes we can tell ourselves, yeah, I have 4 really important tasks to do, and not take into account that you're in meetings all morning long, right? And so I want you, again, reality check. What have you already committed to? And how much time do you have to fill in with work from your to-do list, task list? Number 3 is to do a mind sweep. And so during this daily wrap, I give you the opportunity to just download any other tasks that did not make it on your task list or get updated on your task list throughout the day. And this could have something to do with meetings you were in today or something that's coming up tomorrow, or it could be just a random idea or thought that you had. I want you to grab this. And by grabbing this and updating your task list, like your master task list with this, meaning just because you grabbed it doesn't mean it needs to go on tomorrow's to-do list. It's going to help you feel less distracted and prone to jumping from one thing to the next. We were talking earlier about just jumping and doing something because the thought crossed your mind. But if you train yourself and understand that there's a way to capture that and to plan for it, you may find that you're able to stick to the plan you created a bit easier. Number 4 in the daily wrap is to prioritize. So when we are able to look and see all of our task list is updated and current, and we understand what our availability of time resources are for the next day, I need you to look at that task list and prioritize what needs your time, energy, and attention tomorrow. And by prioritizing, this is going to allow you to understand that not everything can get done. Not all tasks and projects are created equal. And when you have your tasks all in one location and centralized, it is, in my opinion, that that's the only way you're able to actually properly prioritize, and that you're not prioritizing through the filters of what's the last email that came in, what team member said they needed something from me, what text message did I get from a client or a phone call did I get, or what random thought or idea came across my mind. Is that what's going to have me take action? But really taken into context of everything that needs to get done, the time available along with known deadlines, can you truly prioritize for tomorrow what gets your time, energy, and attention? And then step number 5, and this is the step that I do not want you to skip or minimize the benefits of. And number 5 is that you are going to schedule specific tasks from your task list based on the priorities you identified on your calendar. This is imperative because this is what's happening. You're taking time, which is incredibly abstract, hard to quantify, hard to really wrap your mind around it. And by putting specific tasks on your calendar, you're able to visualize time. You're able to make it concrete. And when you have a tendency to fall prey to time blindness, one of the benefits is being able to make something abstract and concrete. And for many of us, we are incredibly visual. And so by putting it on our calendar, we're leaning into creating time as a visual block of time that we can understand. And when we put a task on our to-do list, like you would a meeting or a phone call, we're answering 3 important questions that are incredibly helpful to our time management and productivity. What am I specifically doing? So what is that task that specifically needs to be marked off the list? How long do I think that task or project is going to take? Is it 10 minutes? Is it 30 minutes? This is an estimate. And this is the part of the daily wrap that you will get better and better at understanding and estimating how long something takes. And the third question you answer when you put it on your schedule is, when am I going to do it? And this last step is a version of time blocking. You've probably heard of time blocking before, and you may have heard it in the sense of every Monday you do this and every Tuesday you do that, and continues throughout the week, and each week looks very similar to the week previously. That is definitely a method of time blocking. However, this is another method of time blocking that comes with structure and a lot of flexibility. So step number 5 is scheduling specific tasks on your calendar from your task list that you've identified as a priority. All right, So that's the daily wrap. I do have episode 167. We'll link out to that where I go into it in a bit more detail and from a different perspective. But I really wanted to hit on these 5 steps through the lens of how does this help you with time blindness? Our next strategy or method for helping you with time blindness is breaking your projects and tasks into smaller steps. And this is really important and helpful for estimating how long something will take. It's very difficult to name a huge project and not even understand all the steps that are in it and think, how long do I need to get this done? But what your brain can do is break down the known steps to a project and look at those in its smallest versions or milestones, and then assign a time allocation to those. Our brains also like to know what specifically to do. So earlier during the daily wrap, I didn't say to schedule projects onto your calendar. I said to schedule specific tasks on your calendar. So those tasks could be multiple steps or one step within a project. But when we are too general with scheduling projects or large multi-step activities on our schedule, it really makes it more difficult to quantify the amount of time that we need to allocate towards that. So break those projects and tasks down into smaller tasks. Number 4 is set a timer and alarm for transitions. Now, I am a girl that has episodes, and I've talked to you guys all about notifications and get all those notifications off your phone and, shut down the chimes, rings, and dings that fly across your computer. But I have always said that if you need to transition into another task or a meeting, that those are actually helpful. And so I want you to use your timers and your alarms to help you transition from one task to the next, which goes back to if you have a tendency to have an incredible difficulty moving from one task or project to the next because you just get in that zone, you need to find a way to break that focus, trigger your mind to saying it is time to start transitioning into another activity. This strategy reminds me of when I was, parenting my son when he was a toddler. And I remember learning that if you could give your kid a time of saying, okay, in 10 minutes, we're turning the TV off, or in 10 minutes, we are going to have dinner, if they're playing. And I get that most toddlers do not know what 10 minutes is. But what you're doing is that it's not this abrupt, they're in the middle of playing or they're in the middle of their TV and you just snatch them up and it's like time to eat. And a lot of toddlers have a difficult time transitioning from one task or activity to another. And this tool, as a parenting tool, was actually provided to me to set timers and alarms based on age appropriateness and to be able to talk to your child about what's coming up next so that they understand and there's less resistance to transitioning into another activity. This also helps, the timers and alarms, I just want to say one more thing too, helps with breaks. So if you have 10-minute breaks scheduled, you have your lunch hour, 30 minutes scheduled, I would encourage you to set an alarm for that so that you know to transition to that. Sometimes the advice of how to raise toddlers is no different than the advice of raising ourselves as adults. It is crazy how common the strategies that work raising toddlers work on ourselves. All right, number 5, build in buffer time. Now, this is my number 1 tip when I talk to people about block schedules, when I talk about planning your days, is always schedule in buffer time. Buffer time can also be seen as, I also often say white space on your schedule. So buffer time or white space, which essentially just means that it is not scheduled for anything specific. And I often get asked the question of, well, how much buffer time or white space do I need? And I know you guys don't want to hear this answer, but it depends. It depends on your ability to accurately estimate how long tasks and projects take. It depends on how many disruptions and interruptions that you have in a day. It depends on what type of support you have and team you have around you. Maybe I'll do a whole nother episode about that because there are a lot of little working parts to that. But I would be happy if you just started with 30-minute buffer time, or maybe it's 15 minutes, or maybe it is an hour. Now, this doesn't mean that you're not going to work. It doesn't mean that if you actually had that full hour in the day, you do not know where your to-do list is. Of course you do. But buffer time / white space is the glue. It is the key to helping you maintain your schedule. Because now I've been doing this for over a decade, so about 12 years, scheduling my days, teaching hundreds of business owners to schedule their days. And I have yet found anybody's day go exactly as planned because there's always the unknown. And because we live real lives and run real businesses, and there's always the unexpected, if we have that buffer space or white space, it allows us to maneuver and be flexible and responsive while also holding and maintaining the things we did commit to doing for that day, whether that's an appointment, it's a call, or it's a task or project. Number 6, identify and limit your own known time sucks. Okay, so I know that each person has their own go-to ways of wasting time. We can all be guilty of wasting time. Some people, it's that if anybody even makes eye contact with them, they are all about striking up a conversation. Some people, it's their inbox. Like once they get in, it's this time warp and time suck. Others, it could be scrolling social media, or even if you work from home, I've had clients tell me it's laundry. It's like, oh, I'm just going to put a load of laundry in, and then it's another, and then they get distracted, and then they're filling up the laundry soap. And next thing they know, their little 10-minute break to go change out the laundry became 45 minutes. Whatever your known time sucks are, know what they are, account for them. Understand and accept what they are so that you can try to avoid them. It's almost like this little quicksand. It's like you think you can do it just for a minute, right? You can scroll internet for just a minute. You can just go change out that one load of laundry or dishes. You can have just a quick conversation, but it's like quicksand and it just pulls you in and it's a time suck. Those time sucks then affect how you can allocate your time. And the time sucks are generally a place where you're falling prey to time blindness, right? You're doing something that you're enjoying or that you want to do. And so the time is just slipping through your fingers. Identify your known time sucks and avoid them to help manage your time blindness. Look, I don't know that time blindness is something that can be cured. You know, Dr. Mano said that it's not a specific symptom and it's not a specific diagnosis. But I do know that time blindness is a very real thing. And I also know, because of the work that I do, that there are spectrums from one extreme to the other of experiencing time blindness. And so my goal for you and my ask of you is not to think that there is anything wrong with you, because as I said when I opened up this episode, that there are times where time blindness is absolutely a great thing to have. But in our work, in our day-to-day, oftentimes time blindness has so many unintentional costs to them. And so while we are not trying to cure anything or fix anything because you are not broken, I am asking you to, if you're ready, make improvements. Make improvements by utilizing these 6 strategies and methods that I've shared with you to help you curb that and manage that unintentional time blindness. We are not looking for perfection. This is going to be one of those things that now that I've maybe put a word on experiences that you've had, i.e. time blindness, and you are step number 1, acknowledging that you are prone to time blindness, You may find yourself doing some of these things and being like, oh, snap, I am falling prey to time blindness. And by just checking yourself and getting back on track might be the only thing you need to help you truly manage time blindness. But also the other methods that I shared, I think would be helpful. So we are not looking for perfection. We're looking for improvement. The point is that I want you to have the tools and resources to minimize the costs so that your time blindness is not detrimental to achieving your goals and you running your business and finding it joyful to chase your goals and to run your business. I have loved having you listen to this episode of Small Business Straight Talk. I sure hope you have found today's episode to be empowering and invaluable. But I need to be straight with you. No change, no change. Without taking action, nothing will change for you or your business. So if you listened to today's episode and you identified with any of the costs or symptoms of time blindness, I am asking you to take action. Take action for yourself. Take action for your business. If you are thinking of hiring a coach, now is the time we should be talking. And don't wait. Don't procrastinate. Don't put it off. If you are really looking for support around growing your business, making it more joyful, improving your time management, increasing your profits, then it is just one conversation. But it's a conversation that will potentially get you on the quickest path to improving your time management and elevating your productivity. Whether one-on-one private coaching or my group coaching program, Leverage Lab, is your thing, head on over to amberdelagarza.com/call to schedule a discovery call today. I would love to talk to you about the different ways that we can work together and find out what would be the best fit for you and the best step to move forward. Also, if you are new here, I want to welcome you. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you've been a longtime listener, I would love for you to leave a review wherever you're listening to this episode. And today I have a special thank you going out to Brandon, who left us a review on iTunes. He said, thoughtful and thought-provoking, Amber challenges us to think differently about how we invest our time. Amber brings out the best of the guest and the audience. Thank you so much, Brandon, for sharing a review with us. So that's my straight talk for today. Until next time, have a productive week.